Whenever I post a video about Twice, I usually get a few comments asking if I'll ever talk about Jihyo's album Zone, and every time I try to reply and say that I actually did make a video about it, it just got wiped out during the whole copyright purge era of the choujimi channel. Copyright Gate was like the Battle of Normandy for my channel, to put it in relative terms. That was back when I had absolutely no idea what was going on with copyright and certainly paid the price for that. I went back and found that video recently. It had 7 views total, and I know that about 3 or 4 of those were definitely me rewatching it, so it makes sense that people think I never talked about it. At that point on the channel, I was basically just talking into the void, uploading silly videos about K-pop out of a genuine love for the game. But now, progressing past Twice's 10th anniversary, I think it's time to give Zone the proper look back it deserves. Jihyo's first solo album, one that I think stands out, still to this day, for everything it had to say. From the opening seconds of Killing Me Good, the emotional foundation of Zone comes into focus. The track's sleek production sets the tone for an album defined by tension, between topics of vulnerability and self-assurance, between yielding and reclaiming control. It's an album about authorship, of course, about what it means for Jihyo to finally come into her own voice after nearly a decade of leading one of K-pop's most active groups. The balance of power and control is at the center of everything here. In Killing Me Good, Jihyo begins as the one overwhelmed by love, the one being, quote, killed good, right? But halfway through the song, this dynamic inverts. Her delivery sharpens, her tone lifts, and she becomes the actor rather than the subject. When she sings, quote, "It's time for me to take the lead," it becomes a declaration of authorship. The phrase Killing Me Good folds back on itself, and by the end, it's Jihyo who holds the power, both emotionally and musically. That transformation from surrender to agency defines the spirit of the album that is Zone. For years, Jihyo's role as Twice's leader was all about stability, directing, guiding, holding everything together, counting all the members like she's a commanding officer in the Navy. In Zone, Jihyo reinterprets control as something very internal. Instead of leading others, she's now learning to lead herself. Musically, Killing Me Good captures this process with such great precision. The track borrows from early 2000s R&B and dance pop, but instead of leaning into nostalgic, it sounds very modern. There's a warmth to the mixing that gives her vocal delivery weight. In the bridge, her phrasing stretches just long enough to convey genuine ache and longing. On first impression for this debut, it was very tempting to identify Zone as a showcase for Jihyo's technical ability, but in retrospect, I think that is way too simple. I think most people approach this project knowing she's a great singer already. What this album proves beyond that is that she knows how to communicate feelings with startling clarity as a writer and performer. The genuine power of Zone and the artist behind it lies in expression. Killing Me Good sets that tone early on, and across the rest of the album, she continues to thread together emotion and control in ways that feel so self-aware. The album's middle stretch, especially songs like Talking About It and Closer, expand this growing tension. Both of these songs hinge on atmosphere rather than explosive hooks, drawing their power from restraint. In Closer especially, the instrumental pulls way back in the verses. Her tone softens, the reverb fades, and the hesitation itself becomes a part of the story. It's a moment where the music mirrors her learning to hold space for uncertainty.
You just met me.
Every production detail starts to feel intentional. The bass sits with just enough texture to ground her, while the percussion cuts cleanly through without overshadowing the vocals. Even when the narrative leans introspective, her writing remains so grounded. Beneath the, expected polish of K-pop, there's a subtle sadness and or fear pushing most of these ideas. This kind of honesty has always been a thread in Jihyo's writing. You can trace it through her songwriting for Twice, as early as songs like 24/7 from Twice2gram and, of course, Up No More from Eyes Wide Open. These songs are small glimpses into the person behind the idol, someone grappling with exhaustion and doubt, all stripped from the perfectionism often associated with K-pop. With Zone, that same instinct for sincerity becomes the foundation of who she is as an artist, now charged with telling her own story. Her lyrics are as direct as ever, but emotionally layered through tone and how she expresses these words. Even in the most upbeat moments of the album, there's an undercurrent of introspection that never really goes away. One of the more interesting moments of the album for me is the final song, Nightmare. Lyrically similar to Up No More, it revolves around the idea of restlessness, the inability to, switch off, right? To find calm or settle your mind. Nightmare pushes that theme into something darker and more cinematic. It's about the emotional fatigue that comes from living under constant self-surveillance. The track turns restlessness into performance, mirroring the dual life of the artist and the individual. Again, with this universal ethos about power and control, Jihyo becomes the agent of her own suffering. She's haunted by the ghost that is herself and the expectations she can't help but measure herself to. That thread between the idol and the individual runs through the entire album. What I've come to appreciate about Jihyo's writing the most is that she doesn't really resolve these questions. She can only express it and then sit with it, because these are ideas and feelings that she currently struggles with and doesn't have an answer for. That's what gives this album its emotional depth. Behind the grand performance is a complex that is still in progress. It's a part of who she is in the moment and what fuels her artistry to stand on her own for the first time. It's very striking how Zone feels so self-assured even in its almost overwhelming uncertainty. Jihyo is able to identify the source of what she feels and capture it through production and tone, but that doesn't mean she magically solves the things that trouble her. Every melody and pause and shift in tone contributes to this portrait of a person discovering what leadership actually means when there's no one but herself to lead. In this sense, Zone successfully allows her to be fully visible for the first time. The need to control is now turned inward. In the end, Zone stands out as one of the most self-possessed and, I guess I would say more than anything, one of the most emotionally intelligent projects in K-pop today. I think that is my major takeaway in retrospect. There's something so profound and meaningful in how Jihyo builds her confidence with such patience, step by step, establishing her strength and power through very visceral admissions of vulnerability. Yes, this is what I think. Thank you for watching this. If you did, let me know how you feel about Zone. If you were there for the release, have your thoughts changed on it over time? Do you see the outcome of this album in a different way? And things like that. Thanks again for watching. Subscribe if you want to, and I will see you next time.